Made with love, almost.
The text arrived at 2:47 a.m., glowing like a curse on my phone screen. "You have no idea what your wife's been up to." I stared at the unknown number, my hands still grimy from fixing the busted sewer pipe in our basement. 20 years of marriage, and now some stranger was texting me cryptic warnings in the middle of the night. I almost deleted it, chalked it up to a wrong number or some drunk idiot playing games. Then I heard Sarah's voice drifting down from upstairs, hushed but urgent on what sounded like a phone call. "When will you tell him the kids aren't his?" My blood turned to ice. That was my mother-in-law's voice, clear as day through the heating vent. "Not until they finish college, Mom. Their real dad can't afford it, and I'm not about to start paying for everything myself." Sarah's response hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. I gripped the wrench so hard my knuckles went white, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps. 20 years. 20 goddamn years I'd been busting my A as a contractor, working 60-hour weeks to keep this family afloat while Sarah climbed the corporate ladder at her marketing firm. 2 kids I'd coached through Little League, helped with homework, scared away bullies for. 2 kids who apparently weren't even mine. I crept up the basement stairs, each step deliberate and silent. The house groaned around me. This place I'd been renovating for months, trying to make it perfect for a family that was built on lies. Exposed pipes ran along the ceiling like arteries, and half-finished drywall revealed the skeleton beneath our carefully constructed life. "He's getting suspicious," Sarah continued, her voice carrying that cold, calculating tone she used in business meetings. "He found my other phone yesterday, but I told him it was for work emergencies." "Other phone?" My mind raced. When had she gotten a second phone? And why hadn't I noticed? "Just be careful, honey. Men like him can get dangerous when they feel cornered. Men like me, blue-collar, uneducated, disposable." I'd heard that dismissive tone from Sarah's family for years, but hearing it applied to me in this context made my vision blur with rage. The conversation ended, and I heard Sarah's footsteps moving toward our bedroom. I stayed frozen on the stairs, processing what I'd just learned. My wife was cheating. My kids might not be mine. And everyone seemed to think I was too stupid to figure it out. But they were wrong about that last part. The next morning, I watched Sarah get ready for work with new eyes. She moved through her routine with practiced efficiency. Expensive suit, perfect makeup, designer briefcase. When had she started looking so polished? When had the gap between us grown so wide? "I'll be late tonight," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Big presentation with the Henderson account." "Sure thing," I replied, forcing my voice to stay level. "I'll handle dinner for the kids." She nodded and headed for the garage, her heels clicking against the hardwood floors I'd installed myself 3 summers ago. The same floors where our kids had taken their first steps, where we danced at our anniversary parties, where I'd proposed to renovate the whole house to make it our forever home. After she left, I started my search. If Sarah had a second phone, she had to keep it somewhere. I went through her dresser, her closet, her jewelry box. Nothing. Then I remembered her workout bag, the one she'd started taking to the gym 3 times a week about 6 months ago. Bingo. The phone was tucked into a side pocket, password protected but carelessly left on. The screen showed dozens of text messages from someone named Rick H., her business partner, the smooth-talking a-hole who'd been to our house for dinner parties and barbecues. The guy who'd sat at my table, eaten my food, and smiled at my kids while apparently screwing my wife behind my back. The messages made my stomach turn. Explicit photos, meeting times at the Riverside Motel, detailed descriptions of what they'd done and planned to do. The timestamp showed they'd been at it for over 8 months. 8 months of lies, of late meetings and business trips and girls' nights out. But the worst part was the tone. Sarah wrote about me like I was some kind of obstacle, a problem to be managed until she could figure out her exit strategy. She called me the handyman and joked about how I never suspected anything because I was too busy playing with pipes. Rick's responses were even worse. He talked about me like I was pathetic, a blue-collar loser who didn't deserve a woman like Sarah. He made jokes about my work clothes, my truck, the calluses on my hands. In one message, he'd written, "Can't wait until you're free of that Neanderthal. You deserve so much better." I sat in my kitchen. The kitchen I'd remodeled myself with custom cabinets and granite countertops I'd saved for months to afford, and felt something fundamental shift inside me. The hurt was still there, raw and bleeding, but underneath it was something colder, something calculating. They thought I was stupid. They thought I was just some dumb contractor who'd never figure out their little game. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated me. I'd built this house from the ground up. I understood systems, structures, how to find weak points and exploit them. And if there was one thing I'd learned from 20 years in construction, it was this. When something is rotten, you don't just patch over it. You tear it down and start fresh. My phone buzzed with another text from that unknown number. Riverside Motel, room 237. Tonight at 8 p.m., bring a camera. This time I texted back, "Who is this?" The response came immediately. "Someone who thinks you deserve better. Trust me." I stared at the message for a long moment, then made my decision. I had 3 hours to prepare, and I knew exactly what I was going to do. Sarah and Rick wanted to play games, fine, but they were about to learn that this Neanderthal had a few tricks of his own. I spent the afternoon gathering supplies for my work truck. Industrial-grade zip ties, a portable drill, and most importantly, a 5-gallon bucket of the nastiest, most rancid waste I'd pumped out of backed-up sewer lines over the past week. The smell alone could clear a room, but mixed with some choice additions from my chemical supplies, it would be absolutely unforgettable. At 7:45 p.m., I parked across the street from the Riverside Motel and waited. Sure enough, Rick's silver BMW pulled into the lot right on schedule, followed 5 minutes later by Sarah's Honda. They were nothing if not punctual. I watched them embrace in the parking lot, Sarah's hands running through Rick's perfectly styled hair while he grabbed her A like he owned it. The sight should have broken my heart, but instead I felt that cold calculation spread through my chest like ice water. They disappeared into room 237, and I got to work. Rick's BMW was his pride and joy, a $80,000 status symbol he'd bragged about at every social gathering. Leather seats, premium sound system, custom paint job. He treated that car better than most people treated their children, which made what I did to it so much more satisfying. I picked the lock on the driver's side door, a skill I'd learned from a locksmith buddy, and went to work. The bucket of sewage went all over the front seats, soaking into the leather and pooling in the footwells. I drilled small holes in the floorboards and poured the rest underneath, ensuring the smell would be permanent. Then I used the zip ties to secure a laminated note to the steering wheel. "Next time, bring air freshener." The Neanderthal. The whole operation took less than 10 minutes. I was back in my truck, windows down to air out the smell, when my mysterious informant texted again. "Nice work, but this is just the beginning. Check your mailbox tomorrow." I drove home with my mind racing. Someone else knew about Sarah's affair, someone who wanted to help me get revenge, but who and why? The next morning, I found a manila envelope in my mailbox with no return address. Inside was a single photograph, me, clear as day, standing next to Rick's BMW with the bucket in my hands. The timestamp showed last night, 8:23 p.m. There was a note attached. "Don't worry, I'm on your side, but you need to be more careful. They're building a case against you. A friend." My blood ran cold. A case against me? For what? I got my answer 2 hours later when Rick called, his voice shaking with rage. "I know it was you, you psychotic fool. I've got security footage and I'm pressing charges." "I have no idea what you're talking about," I replied calmly. "But if someone vandalized your car, maybe you should think about why. Karma has a way of catching up to people. You're insane. Sarah was right about you. You're a dangerous, unstable loser who can't handle the fact that she's outgrown you." The line went dead, but his words echoed in my head. Sarah had called me dangerous and unstable? When and to whom? I was about to find out just how deep this rabbit hole went. The boxing gym smelled like sweat, leather, and broken dreams, exactly the kind of place where a man could think clearly. I'd been coming here for 15 years, ever since Tommy Kowalski opened it in an old warehouse on the south side of town. Tommy was an ex-heavyweight who'd fought his way out of the projects and into a decent life, and he had a gift for reading people. "You look like crap, Dave," he said, as I wrapped my hands for the heavy bag. And not the usual, "my back hurts from crawling under houses" kind of crap. This is deeper. I told him everything. The phone call, the affair, the DNA bombshell, my little revenge stunt with Rick's car. Tommy listened without interruption, occasionally nodding or grunting his understanding. "So what's your plan?" he asked when I finished. "I don't know yet, but they think I'm some dumb redneck who'll just roll over and take it. They're wrong." Tommy smiled, the expression transforming his scarred face into something almost fatherly. You know what your problem is? You're still thinking like a sufferer. Stop taking hits and start throwing them. I already hit back. Did you miss the part about the sewage? That was a jab. I'm talking about haymakers, Dave. The kind of hits that put people down for good. Over the next week, I started paying attention to things I'd ignored for years. Sarah's behavior patterns, her friends, her work schedule, the way she talked to our kids, Emma, 16, and Jake, 14. The kids I'd raised, loved, sacrificed for, who might not even be mine. The DNA test kit arrived in a plain brown box. I'd ordered it online using a prepaid credit card, having it delivered to my work address. Getting the samples was easy. Sarah's toothbrush, hair from her pillow, and similar samples from both kids. The waiting period was 2 weeks, but I had plenty to keep me busy in the meantime. My anonymous informant kept sending me information. Photos of Sarah and Rick entering hotels, copies of their text messages, even audio recordings of their phone conversations. Whoever this person was, they had serious surveillance skills and access to technology I could only dream of. The recordings were the worst part. Listening to Sarah describe our marriage as a dead-end situation and our kids as financial obligations made me physically sick. But it was Rick's commentary that really got to me. The guy's a walking stereotype, he'd said in one recording. Drives a pickup truck, drinks beer, watches football. Sarah's way too sophisticated for someone like that. Sophisticated. Right. Sarah, who used to laugh at my jokes, who'd curl up with me on Sunday afternoons to watch movies, who'd once told me that my hands were the most beautiful thing about me because they could build anything. When had she become too sophisticated for the man she'd married? The answer came during Emma's school play. Sarah and I sat in the auditorium, maintaining the pretense of a happy marriage for the sake of appearances. But I noticed how she kept checking her phone, how she barely applauded when Emma finished her scene, how she whispered to her friend Linda about exciting developments at work. After the play, we mingled with other parents in the lobby. I was talking to Jim Peterson about his kitchen renovation when I saw Rick appear at Sarah's side. He'd somehow gotten an invitation to a school event for kids that weren't even his, or maybe they were. The thought made my hands clench into fists. Dave, right? Rick extended his hand with that practiced salesman smile. Sarah's told me so much about you. You're the contractor, right? Must be nice working with your hands all day. The condescension dripped from every word, but his smile never wavered. This was the man who'd been screwing my wife, insulting me behind my back, and now had the balls to shake my hand at my daughter's school play. That's right, I replied, squeezing his hand just hard enough to make him wince. I fix things that are broken. It's amazing what you can accomplish when you know where to apply the right pressure. His smile faltered for just a moment, but Sarah appeared at his side before he could respond. Rick was just telling me about the Henderson presentation, she said smoothly. It looks like we might have to work late again tomorrow night. Again? I asked, playing dumb. You've been working a lot of late nights lately. It's a big account, Rick chimed in. Sarah's been absolutely essential to the process. I don't know what I'd do without her. The double meaning was clear, and from the slight smirk on his face, he wanted me to know it. This wasn't just about the affair. It was about humiliation. They were flaunting it in front of me, confident that I was too stupid or too weak to do anything about it. That night, I found a new envelope in my mailbox. This time, it contained something that made my blood boil. Photographs of Sarah and Rick at various locations around town, but not just hotels. They'd been to the restaurants where Sarah and I used to go for anniversaries, the park where we'd had our first date, even the coffee shop where I'd proposed 21 years ago. They weren't just having an affair. They were systematically replacing every meaningful memory I had with Sarah. It was psychological warfare, and I was losing badly. But the worst was yet to come. The next afternoon, I came home early from a job site to find Jake sitting at the kitchen table, his face red with anger and embarrassment. Dad, there's something I need to tell you, he said, his voice cracking with adolescent emotion. What's wrong, buddy? Mom's been saying things about you. To her friends, to Grandma, even to some guy who's been calling the house. She says you're getting paranoid and jealous, that you've been acting weird and aggressive. My heart sank. What kind of things? She told Grandma you've been following her, going through her stuff, making threats. She said she's scared of you, that you might do something crazy. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Sarah wasn't just cheating, she was building a narrative, painting me as an unstable, dangerous husband so that when everything came out, she'd be the sufferer and I'd be the villain. Jake, I need you to listen to me very carefully, I said, sitting down across from him. I would never hurt your mother or you or Emma, never. But there are some things going on that you don't understand yet. Like what? I looked at my son, tall for his age, with Sarah's green eyes and what I'd always thought was my stubborn chin. In 2 weeks, I'd know for sure if he was really mine. But regardless of what the DNA test said, I'd raised him. I'd been there for every scraped knee, every homework crisis, every triumph and failure. That had to count for something. I can't explain everything right now, I said finally, but I need you to trust me, and I need you to be careful what you say around your mother for a while. Jake nodded slowly, but I could see the confusion and worry in his eyes. I was asking a 14-year-old to keep secrets from his mother, to choose sides in a war he didn't understand. It wasn't fair, but nothing about this situation was fair. That evening, Sarah came home with a black eye. "Oh my God, what happened?" I asked, rushing to examine the bruise. "I walked into a door at the office," she said, pulling away from me. "It's fine." But something about her tone set off alarm bells in my head. The bruise looked fresh, maybe a few hours old, and there was something in her eyes. Not pain or embarrassment, but calculation. My phone buzzed with a text from my anonymous informant. She did that to herself. Check the security footage from her office building. She went into the bathroom alone and came out with the bruise. She's setting you up. I stared at the message, my mind reeling. Sarah had given herself a black eye? Why would she? Oh, crap. She was building evidence for a domestic violence case. The paranoid, aggressive behavior Jake had mentioned, the mysterious bruise, probably documented complaints to friends and family about my threatening behavior. She was constructing a narrative that would give her everything in a divorce. The house, the kids, alimony, and probably a restraining order that would keep me from defending myself. It was brilliant, in a sociopathic kind of way. And if I hadn't had my mysterious guardian angel feeding me information, it probably would have worked. But two could play at that game. I spent the next 3 days documenting everything. I installed hidden cameras in the common areas of our house. Legal, since it was my home too. I started recording every conversation with Sarah using an app on my phone that looked like a calculator. I gathered financial records, phone bills, credit card statements, anything that might prove her infidelity and deception. Most importantly, I started building my own narrative. I made appointments with our family doctor, citing stress and anxiety over Sarah's increasingly erratic behavior. I confided in neighbors about my concerns for Sarah's mental health, how she'd been staying out late and acting secretive. I even called her mother, expressing worry that Sarah might be having some kind of breakdown. "She gave herself a black eye, Margaret," I told my mother-in-law over the phone. "I'm worried she might hurt herself more seriously. Maybe she needs professional help." It was a masterpiece of manipulation, and it felt good to finally be playing offense instead of defense. The DNA results arrived on a Thursday. I opened the envelope in my truck, parked outside the post office, my hands shaking with anticipation and dread. Emma, 99.97% probability of paternity, she was mine. Jake, 0% probability of paternity, he wasn't. I sat in that truck for 20 minutes, staring at the papers and trying to process what they meant. Emma was my biological daughter, but Jake, the kid who looked up to me, who wanted to learn carpentry, who called me his hero, wasn't related to me at all. But you know what? It didn't matter. Biology was just genetics. Being a father was about showing up, about being there when it counted, about love and sacrifice and commitment. I'd been Jake's father for 14 years, and some lab report wasn't going to change that. What it did change was my approach to Sarah. That night, I confronted her in our bedroom, the DNA results in my hand. "We need to talk," I said, closing the door behind me. She looked up from her laptop, and I saw fear flicker across her face before she composed herself. "About what?" "About Jake, about his real father, about the lies you've been telling for 14 years. The color drained from her face, but she rallied quickly. "I don't know what you're talking about." I held up the DNA results. "These say otherwise." For a moment, her mask slipped completely, and I saw the real Sarah, cold, calculating, and utterly without remorse. "You had no right," she said quietly. "I had every right. He's been my son for 14 years. I deserve to know the truth." "The truth?" She laughed bitterly. "You want the truth? Fine. Jake's father was a mistake, a one-night stand when we were having problems. I chose you, Dave. I chose our family. Doesn't that count for something?" "When we were having problems? Jake's 14, Sarah. We were trying for a baby. That wasn't a rough patch. That was you cheating on your husband while we were actively trying to start a family." She stood up, her composure cracking further. "You don't understand the pressure I was under. You were working all the time. We were broke. I was lonely. So you screwed some stranger and let me raise his kid. You loved Jake. You've always loved him." "That's not the point," I shouted, my control finally snapping. "The point is that you lied to me for 14 years. You let me believe he was mine, let me pay for everything, sacrifice everything, while you knew the whole time." Sarah's face hardened. "Keep your voice down. You'll scare the kids." "The kids? You mean Emma and the son you tricked me into raising?" She slapped me then, hard enough to snap my head to the side. For a moment, we stared at each other in shock. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did." I touched my cheek, feeling the sting. "And now I know exactly who you really are." I walked out of the bedroom and didn't come back. That night, I slept in the basement, surrounded by the pipes and tools of my trade, planning my next move. The war was officially on. My anonymous informant turned out to be Linda Morrison, Sarah's best friend and maid of honor at our wedding. The revelation came in the form of a late-night phone call 3 days after my confrontation with Sarah. "Dave, it's Linda. We need to meet." I almost hung up. Linda had been part of Sarah's inner circle for years, one of the women who'd gradually made me feel unwelcome at social gatherings with their talk of wine tastings and yoga retreats and how difficult it must be to be married to blue-collar men. "Why would I want to meet with you?" "Because I'm the one who's been sending you information, and because Sarah's planning something that's going to destroy your life." We met at Murphy's Bar, a dive on the outskirts of town where neither of us was likely to run into anyone we knew. Linda looked terrible, dark circles under her eyes, her usually perfect hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, her hands shaking as she lit a cigarette. "Why?" I asked without preamble. "Why help me?" "Because I know what it's like," she said quietly. "My ex-husband cheated on me with my sister. Took me 2 years to find out, and by then he'd cleaned out our bank accounts and convinced half our friends that I was the problem." "So, this is about revenge against cheaters?" "No, Dave. This is about Sarah specifically." Linda took a long drag of her cigarette. "She's not just cheating on you. She's been planning this for over a year. The affair with Rick is just the beginning." Linda pulled out a folder thick with documents and photographs. Bank statements showing money being moved to accounts I'd never heard of. Real estate listings for apartments across town. Legal documents from a divorce attorney I'd never met. "She's been systematically moving assets," Linda explained. "The joint savings account? She's been transferring money to a personal account for months. The investment portfolio you thought was growing? She's been liquidating it piece by piece." I stared at the papers, my hands shaking with rage. "How long have you known?" 6 months. I found out by accident when she left her laptop open at my house. I saw the bank transfers, the emails with her lawyer, the whole plan." "And you didn't tell me?" Linda's face crumpled. "I tried to convince her to stop, to work things out with you. She laughed at me, Dave. She said you were too stupid to figure it out, and even if you did, she'd already made sure you'd look like the bad guy." "The domestic violence setup. That's just part of it." Linda pulled out more documents. "She's been documenting everything. Every time you've raised your voice, every argument, every moment of frustration. She's got recordings, photos, even testimony from people who don't realize they're being used as witnesses." My blood ran cold. "What people?" "Your mother-in-law, for one. Sarah's been calling her every time you two fight, crying about how scared she is, how you've been getting more aggressive. Margaret thinks you're having some kind of breakdown." "Jesus Christ. It gets worse. She's been talking to Emma, planting seeds about your behavior, making her think you might be dangerous. She's trying to turn your own daughter against you." I thought about Emma's behavior over the past few weeks, how she'd been avoiding me, how she flinched when I raised my voice, how she'd started spending more time at friends' houses. I'd attributed it to typical teenage stuff, but now I realized it was something much more sinister. "Why are you telling me this now?" Linda stubbed out her cigarette and immediately lit another. "Because yesterday Sarah asked me to lie for her in court. She wants me to testify that I've seen you threaten her, that I'm afraid for her safety. She's planning to file for divorce next week, along with a restraining order that'll kick you out of your own house." The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Sarah wasn't just leaving me. She was destroying me, taking the house, The kids, the money, and my reputation. I'd be left with nothing but debt and a criminal record. But you have something she doesn't know about, Linda continued. You have me, and I've been documenting everything she's been doing. Linda pulled out a flash drive. Phone recordings, copies of her emails, photos of her with Rick, financial records showing the asset transfers. Everything you need to prove she's been planning this fraud from the beginning. I took the drive, feeling its weight in my palm. Why risk this for me? Because Sarah destroyed my marriage too. She introduced my ex to my sister at a party, encouraged their friendship, even covered for them when they started their affair. She gets off on this stuff, Dave. She likes watching people suffer. That night, I sat in my basement workshop surrounded by tools and half-finished projects and planned my counterattack. Sarah thought she was playing chess while I was playing checkers, but she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated the power of having an inside source. Over the next week, I began implementing my strategy. First, I secured my own assets. I opened a new bank account and started depositing my paychecks there instead of our joint account. I moved my tools and equipment to a storage unit Sarah didn't know about. I made copies of every important document and stored them in a safety deposit box. Then, I started gathering intelligence. Using Linda's information, I was able to track Sarah and Rick's movements, their communication patterns, their plans. I learned that Rick was engaged to a woman named Jennifer who had no idea about the affair. I discovered that Sarah had been bad-mouthing me to our mutual friends, poisoning them against me in preparation for the divorce. Most importantly, I learned about the timeline. Sarah planned to file for divorce the following Friday, the same day Rick was supposed to break up with his fiancée. They'd already put a deposit down on a condo across town and were planning to move in together immediately after the legal proceedings began. But they'd forgotten one crucial detail. I wasn't the dumb redneck they thought I was. On Wednesday night, I put the first phase of my plan into action. Using information from Linda, I knew that Rick and his fiancée were having dinner at Romano's, the upscale Italian place downtown. I also knew that Sarah was supposedly at a girls' night, but was actually at the Riverside Motel with Rick's business partner, Marcus. I arrived at Romano's at 8 p.m. and spotted Rick immediately. He was at a corner table with a beautiful brunette who was showing him something on her phone, probably wedding plans. They looked happy, in love, completely unaware that Rick was living a double life. I approached their table with a manila envelope in my hand. "Excuse me," I said to the woman. "Are you Jennifer Walsh?" She looked up, surprised. "Yes." "My name is Dave Thompson. I think there's something you need to know about your fiancé." Rick's face went white. "Dave, what the hell are you doing?" "I'm returning some photos that Rick left at my house," I said calmly, handing Jennifer the envelope. "I thought you might want to see them." Jennifer opened the envelope and pulled out the explicit photos Sarah had sent to Rick, along with printouts of their text conversations. Her face went through a series of emotions: confusion, shock, horror, and finally rage. "What is this?" she whispered. "Your fiancé's been having an affair with my wife for almost a year," I explained. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but I thought you deserved to know before the wedding." Rick stood up so fast his chair fell over. "Jennifer, I can explain." "Explain this?" She held up one of the more graphic photos. "Explain how you've been screwing some married woman while planning our wedding?" The entire restaurant was staring now, but I didn't care. This was just the opening act. Jennifer threw her wine in Rick's face, then slapped him hard enough to echo through the dining room. "We're done," she said loudly. "And I'm keeping the ring, you cheating piece of crap." She stormed out, leaving Rick standing there dripping with wine and humiliation. He turned to me with homicide in his eyes. "You're going to pay for this," he snarled. "Actually, I think you're the one who's going to pay," I replied. "See, Jennifer's father owns 3 of the biggest construction companies in the state. Companies that do a lot of business with your marketing firm. I wonder how he's going to feel about his daughter's ex-fiancée." Rick's face went even paler as the implications sank in. His career was probably over, along with his engagement. "This isn't over," he said. "You're right," I agreed. "It's just getting started." Phase 2 began the next morning. Using Linda as an intermediary, I leaked select information to Sarah's coworkers about her affair and her plans to defraud me in the divorce. I made sure the information came from anonymous sources who were concerned about the company's reputation. By noon, Sarah was getting calls from her boss asking about her relationship with Rick, and whether it was affecting her work performance. By the end of the day, both she and Rick had been called into HR for a meeting about inappropriate workplace relationships. Phase 3 was more personal. I used the recordings Linda had given me to create a compilation of Sarah's most damning statements, her plans to defraud me, her comments about the kids, her discussions of my supposed mental instability. Then I burned the compilation to CDs and mailed them to everyone in Sarah's family, along with copies of the DNA results and the financial documents showing her asset transfers. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. Sarah's mother called her screaming about the lies she'd been told. Her sister demanded an explanation for the affair. Her brother, a police officer, warned her that what she was planning constituted fraud and could result in criminal charges. But the best part was Emma's reaction. My daughter confronted Sarah that evening, demanding to know if the recordings were real. "Mom, did you really say those things about Dad? About us?" Sarah tried to deny it, to claim the recordings were fake or taken out of context, but Emma wasn't buying it. For the first time in months, my daughter looked at me without fear or suspicion. "I'm sorry, Dad," she said later that night. "I should have trusted you." "It's not your fault, sweetheart. Your mother is very good at manipulation." "Are you and Mom getting divorced?" I looked at my daughter, tall, smart, strong, everything I'd hoped she'd become, and decided to tell her the truth. "Yes, we are, but that doesn't change anything between us. You're my daughter and I love you more than anything in the world." She hugged me then, the first real affection I'd gotten from her in weeks. By Friday morning, Sarah's carefully constructed plan was in ruins. Her family was furious with her, her co-workers were questioning her integrity, and Rick was facing his own professional and personal disasters. But Sarah wasn't done fighting. That afternoon, she came home with a police officer and a restraining order. "Mr. Thompson," the officer said, "I need you to pack a bag and leave the premises. You're not allowed within 500 feet of your wife or children until the hearing next week." I looked at Sarah, standing behind the officer with fake tears in her eyes and a fresh bruise on her arm. Another self-inflicted injury, I was sure. "This is maltreatment, officer," I said calmly. "My wife is trying to defraud me in a divorce, and she's using false domestic violence claims to kick me out of my own house." "That's for the courts to decide, sir. Right now, I need you to comply with the order." I packed a bag and left, but not before planning one final surprise. Hidden in the basement behind the water heater, I'd installed a camera system that would continue recording everything that happened in the house. If Sarah brought Rick over, if she destroyed my belongings, if she tried to plant evidence against me, I'd have it all on video. As I drove away from the house I'd built with my own hands, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: confidence. Sarah thought she'd won, but this was just another phase of my plan. The real fireworks were about to begin. The community center on Maple Street had seen better days, but it was perfect for what I had in mind. Large enough to hold a crowd, public enough that nobody could claim I'd threatened or trapped anyone, and equipped with a sound system that would ensure everyone heard every word. I'd rented it under the pretense of hosting a family reconciliation meeting, a chance for Sarah and me to work out our differences in front of friends and family before proceeding with the divorce. The invitation list was carefully curated. Sarah's parents, her siblings, our closest neighbors, Emma and Jake, Rick and his now ex-fiancée Jennifer, Linda, and about 20 other people who'd been drawn into Sarah's web of lies over the past year. Sarah couldn't refuse without looking like the unreasonable one, especially since I'd positioned it as a last-ditch effort to save our marriage for the kids' sake. She agreed, probably thinking it would give her another opportunity to publicly portray me as unstable while she played the sufferer. She had no idea what was coming. I arrived early to set up the equipment: a laptop connected to the sound system, a projector aimed at a white screen I'd borrowed from the local church, and multiple backup systems in case Sarah or Rick tried to sabotage anything. Tommy from the boxing gym was there as my moral support, but really he was security in case things got physical. People started arriving around 7 p.m. Sarah came with Rick, which was bold considering everyone now knew about their affair. She was playing the role of the strong woman who'd found love after years of an abusive marriage, while Rick was the supportive partner helping her through a difficult time. Emma and Jake sat in the front row, looking uncomfortable and confused. They'd been living with Sarah since the restraining order, and I could see the strain on their faces. Emma kept glancing at me with apologetic eyes, while Jake looked angry and hurt, though whether at me or Sarah I couldn't tell. Sarah's family filled the middle rows, their expressions ranging from concerned to hostile. Her mother, Margaret, kept shooting me dirty looks, clearly still believing Sarah's version of events despite the recordings I'd sent. Her brother Tom, the cop, was there in an unofficial capacity, probably expecting me to have some kind of breakdown. The back rows were filled with neighbors and friends, people who'd known us for years but had been gradually poisoned against me by Sarah's careful campaign of character assassination. At exactly 7:30, I stood up and walked to the front of the room. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice carrying clearly through the sound system. "I know this is unusual, but I felt it was important for everyone to hear the truth about what's been happening in my marriage before Sarah and I proceed with our divorce." Sarah smiled tightly, probably thinking this was going to be some kind of public apology or breakdown that would validate her narrative. "For the past year, many of you have heard stories about my behavior, about how I've become paranoid, aggressive, maybe even dangerous. Sarah has painted a picture of a marriage destroyed by my jealousy and instability." Murmurs of agreement from the audience. This was the story they'd been told, the version they believed. But before we go any further, I think you should hear Sarah's own words about our marriage, our family, and her plans for the future. I clicked a button on the laptop and Sarah's voice filled the room through the speakers. "The guy's a walking stereotype, drives a pickup truck, drinks beer, watches football. I'm way too sophisticated for someone like that." The murmur changed tone immediately. That wasn't the voice of a scared, misused wife. That was the voice of someone filled with contempt. Sarah's face went white. "Dave, what are you doing?" "I'm playing the truth," I replied, clicking to the next recording. Sarah's voice again, this time talking to her mother. "I'm not telling him about Jake until after the divorce is final. Let him pay for college first. Then he can find out the kid isn't even his." Gasps from the audience. Jake's face crumpled as the words hit him. Emma reached over to grab her brother's hand, tears streaming down her face. "Stop this," Sarah said, standing up. "These recordings are illegal. You can't—" "Actually, they're completely legal," I interrupted. "Recorded in my own home with the knowledge and consent of at least one party, me. But let's continue." The next recording was Sarah talking to Rick about their plans. "Once I get the restraining order, I'll have the house and the kids. The divorce settlement should give me at least 60% of everything, plus alimony. Then we can start our real life together." Rick stood up now, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "This is maltreatment. You can't ambush us like this." "Sit down, Rick," I said calmly. "We're just getting started." I clicked to a video file, and the projector screen lit up with security footage from Sarah's office building. The timestamp showed the day she came home with her first black eye. "This is Sarah entering the women's restroom at her office," I narrated as we watched her go in looking normal. "And this is her coming out 3 minutes later." The Sarah on screen emerged with a fresh bruise on her face, looking around to make sure no one saw her. The room erupted. Sarah's mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Her brother Tom leaned forward, his cop instincts clearly triggered by what he was seeing. "She gave herself that black eye," I continued, "and several others over the past few months, all to build a case for domestic violence that would guarantee her everything in the divorce." "You're insane," Sarah screamed, but her voice was shaking now. "This is all fake. He's manipulating the evidence." "Really? Then explain this." I played an audio recording of Sarah on the phone with her lawyer. "The bruises are working perfectly. Even his daughter is starting to believe he hit me. A few more incidents and we'll have an airtight case." Emma stood up abruptly, her face twisted with disgust and betrayal. "Mom, how could you? How could you make me think Dad hurt you?" "Emma, honey, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly." Emma's voice cracked with emotion. "You lied to me. You made me afraid of my own father." Jake was crying now, the revelation about his paternity hitting him like a physical blow. "Am I really not Dad's son?" I walked over to him, ignoring the restraining order that technically prohibited this contact. "Jake, listen to me. Biology doesn't make someone your father. Love does. Showing up does. Being there when it matters does. I've been your dad for 14 years, and that's never going to change. But my real father was a one-night stand who's never been part of your life," I said firmly. "I'm the one who taught you to ride a bike, who helped with your homework, who cheered at your baseball games. I'm your dad, and I always will be." Sarah tried to approach us, but Tommy stepped in her way. "I think you've done enough damage," he said quietly. "This is abduction," Rick shouted. "You can't keep us here against our will." "The doors aren't locked," I replied. "You're free to leave any time." But if you do, everyone's going to wonder what else you're hiding. I turned back to the audience, many of whom were staring at Sarah with disgust and disbelief. There's more, I said. Sarah hasn't just been planning to defraud me. She's been systematically stealing from our joint accounts for months. I displayed bank records showing the transfers, real estate documents showing the apartment she'd rented with Rick, even receipts for the furniture they'd bought together using money from our joint savings. She's also been manipulating all of you, I continued. Every story about my behavior, every tear-filled phone call about being scared, every bruise you saw, it was all calculated to turn you against me so that when the divorce happened, I'd have no support system. I looked directly at Sarah's mother. Margaret, remember when Sarah called you crying about how I'd threatened her? Check the timestamp on that call against the security footage of me at a job site 30 miles away. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable. Sarah's carefully constructed narrative crumbled under the weight of recorded facts. But Sarah wasn't done fighting. Fine, she screamed, her mask finally slipping completely. You want the truth? Here's the truth. I stopped loving you years ago. You're boring. You're predictable. You're everything I don't want in a partner. Rick makes me feel alive in ways you never could. The room fell silent. This was the real Sarah, the one I'd glimpsed in those recordings, but that most people had never seen. I deserve better than this life, she continued, gesturing around the room. Better than this town, better than these people, better than you. Rick and I have plans, real plans, and I'm not going to let some blue-collar loser destroy them. What about the kids? Emma asked quietly. Sarah looked at her daughter with something approaching indifference. You'll understand when you're older. Sometimes you have to choose between being happy and being trapped. That was the moment Sarah lost everything. Not just the legal case or the money or the house. She lost her children. I could see it in Emma's face, in Jake's posture, in the way they both unconsciously moved away from her. Rick, meanwhile, was edging toward the door. Sarah, maybe we should... Don't you dare abandon me now. Sarah whirled on him. This was your plan, too. You're the one who said we should take everything. I never said anything about fake domestic violence or fraud, Rick protested. That was all you... And there it was, Rick throwing Sarah under the bus to save his own skin. Sarah realized what was happening and launched herself at Rick, screaming obscenities and clawing at his face. He tried to fend her off, but she was in full fury mode now, years of careful control exploding into violence. Tommy and Tom the cop moved to separate them, but not before Sarah had drawn blood and Rick had shoved her hard enough to send her sprawling. That's attack! Sarah screamed from the floor. You all saw it! He hit me! Actually, said Jennifer, Rick's ex-fiancée, who'd been quietly filming with her phone, we saw you attack him and him defend himself. Big difference. As Sarah was helped to her feet, she looked around the room at faces that had once been friendly, supportive, loving. Now they showed disgust, disappointment, and betrayal. You're all going to regret this, she said, her voice low and venomous. Every single one of you. She stormed out, Rick trailing behind her like a whipped dog. The room stayed silent for a long moment after they left. Then Emma walked over to me, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, Dad. I should have believed you. Jake joined us, and I pulled both kids into a hug that felt like coming home after a long, dark journey. It's not your fault, I told them. Your mother is very good at manipulation, but it's over now. Margaret approached us hesitantly. Dave, I owe you an apology. I believed her stories, and I'm ashamed of that. She fooled a lot of people, I replied. That was the point. Over the next hour, I received more apologies than I knew what to do with. Neighbors who'd avoided me, friends who'd believed Sarah's lies, family members who'd questioned my character. They all wanted to make amends. But the most important moment came when Tom pulled me aside. Dave, I need to ask, do you want to press charges? What Sarah did constitutes fraud, perjury, filing false police reports. I can have her arrested tonight. I thought about it for a moment. The old me, the hurt and angry me, wanted to see Sarah in handcuffs. But looking at my kids, seeing the pain they were already dealing with, I realized that revenge had its limits. No, I said finally. She's lost her family, her reputation, probably her job. That's punishment enough. Tom nodded approvingly. You're a better man than she deserved. As people began to leave, Linda approached me. I'm proud of you, she said. You could have destroyed her completely, but you chose mercy. I chose my kids, I corrected. They don't need to see their mother in prison, even after everything she's done. The community center emptied out, leaving just me, Tommy, and my children. Emma and Jake helped me pack up the equipment, working together like a family again for the first time in months. "So what happens now?" Jake asked as we loaded the last of the gear into my truck. "Now we go home," I said. "All of us. Together." "What about Mom?" I looked at my son, not my biological son, but my son in every way that mattered, and chose my words carefully. "Your mother made her choices. Now she has to live with the consequences. But that doesn't change the fact that she loves you both, even if she has a terrible way of showing it." "Will we see her again?" "That's up to you. But remember, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean trusting someone who's proven they can't be trusted. It just means letting go of the anger so it doesn't poison your own life." We drove home through the quiet streets of our small town, past the houses where neighbors who'd shunned me for months were now probably discussing what they'd witnessed tonight. Past the office building where Sarah had given herself black eyes to frame me. Past the motel where she'd betrayed 20 years of marriage. But I wasn't thinking about any of that. I was thinking about the future. About rebuilding my relationship with my kids. About finishing the renovations on our house. About starting over with a clean slate and a clear conscience. Sarah had tried to destroy me, but she'd failed. Not because I was stronger than her, but because the truth was stronger than her lies. And in the end, that made all the difference. The divorce proceedings that followed were swift and brutal. With the evidence I'd presented at the community center, Sarah's lawyer advised her to accept whatever terms I offered, rather than risk criminal charges for fraud and perjury. She got nothing. No alimony, no house, no custody. The court awarded me everything based on her attempted fraud, and she was ordered to pay restitution for the money she'd stolen from our joint accounts. Rick lost his job 2 days after the community center showdown. Jennifer's father had indeed pulled his construction contracts from Rick's marketing firm, and the company decided Rick was too much of a liability to keep employed. His professional reputation was destroyed, and he ended up moving to another state to start over. But that wasn't enough for me, not after what they'd put my family through. 3 weeks after the divorce was finalized, I put the final phase of my plan into action. Sarah had moved into a cheap apartment on the other side of town, the kind of place she'd once looked down on as beneath her standards. She was working as a receptionist at a dental office, the only job she could find after word of her behavior spread through the local business community. I knew her schedule because Emma had been visiting her occasionally, trying to maintain some kind of relationship despite everything that had happened. Sarah worked until 6 p.m., stopped at the grocery store on Wednesdays, and was usually home by 7, which gave me plenty of time to prepare my surprise. I'd kept one piece of evidence from the community center presentation, a video recording of Sarah and Rick in her apartment, taken by the private investigator I'd hired after discovering the affair. It was explicit, degrading, and featured Sarah saying things about our marriage and our children that would make any decent person sick. But instead of using it in court, I'd saved it for this moment. On Wednesday evening, I waited until Sarah's car pulled into her apartment complex, then I began my work. Using a projector and a portable speaker system, I set up outside her building and began playing the video on the sidewall of the adjacent building. The audio carried clearly through the evening air. Sarah's voice describing in graphic detail what she wanted to do with Rick, followed by her laughing about how stupid I was, how easy it had been to fool me, how she couldn't wait to take everything I'd worked for. Within minutes, windows began opening as residents came to see what was happening. Sarah's neighbors, many of whom she'd tried to befriend with sob stories about her abusive ex-husband, watched in shock as the real Sarah was displayed for all to see. Sarah herself appeared in her doorway just as the video reached the part where she talked about the children. Emma's just like her father, weak and gullible. And Jake, well, Jake's not even his, so who cares what happens to him? The look of horror on Sarah's face as she realized what was happening was worth every moment of planning. She ran toward me, screaming for me to stop, but I was parked legally on a public street, and the building wall I was projecting onto was also public property. "Turn it off," she screamed. "Please, Dave, turn it off." "Why?" I asked calmly. "This is just the truth. I thought you believed in honesty." By now, a crowd had gathered. Sarah's neighbors, people from the street, even some teenagers who'd stopped to watch the show. Everyone was seeing the real Sarah, not the sufferer she'd pretended to be, but the cold, calculating woman who destroyed her family for money and sex. The video continued, showing Sarah and Rick planning their fraud, discussing how to manipulate the children, even laughing about the fake domestic violence claims. "You're destroying me," Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. "No," I replied. "I'm just showing everyone who you really are. You destroyed yourself." Sarah fell to her knees on the sidewalk, sobbing as her neighbors watched the most intimate and damaging moments of her affair play out on the wall above her. Some of them were recording with their phones, ensuring this humiliation would follow her forever. But I wasn't done. As the video ended, I switched to the audio recordings from the community center, Sarah's final meltdown, where she'd revealed her true feelings about our marriage, our children, and our life together. "I deserve better than this life, better than this town, better than these people," the crowd murmured angrily. These were her neighbors, the people she'd have to face every day, and she just called them beneath her. Rick makes me feel alive in ways you never could. More murmurs, more phone cameras recording. Sometimes you have to choose between being happy and being trapped. That was the line that broke something in the crowd. Several people began shouting at Sarah, calling her selfish, heartless, a terrible mother. Someone threw a soda can that bounced off the wall near her head. I shut off the equipment then. The point had been made. Sarah looked up at me from the sidewalk, her makeup ruined, her carefully constructed new life in shambles. "Why?" she whispered. "Why couldn't you just let it go?" I knelt down beside her, speaking quietly so only she could hear. "Because you tried to turn my children against me. Because you stole from me, lied about me, tried to have me arrested for crimes you committed against yourself. Because you thought I was too stupid and weak to fight back." I stood up, looking down at the woman who'd shared my bed for 20 years, who'd borne my children, who'd promised to love and honor me until death do us part. But mostly because you forgot something important about me, Sarah. I'm not just a contractor. I'm not just some blue-collar guy who works with his hands. I'm a man who builds things from the ground up, who understands systems and structures and how to tear them down when they're rotten. I gestured to the crowd of her neighbors, still recording, still watching her with disgust and contempt. You built yourself a new life based on lies and manipulation. So I tore it down and showed everyone the foundation it was built on. Sarah's face crumpled completely. "I have nothing left, no job, no friends, no family. You've taken everything." "No," I corrected. "You threw everything away. I just made sure everyone knew it." I packed up my equipment and drove home, leaving Sarah on the sidewalk surrounded by neighbors who now knew exactly who she really was. The next morning, Emma called me. "Dad, Mom's in the hospital. She took some pills last night." My blood ran cold. "Is she okay?" "She'll live." "But Dad, what did you do? Everyone's talking about some video." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of what I'd done. In my quest for revenge, had I pushed Sarah too far? I showed people the truth about who she really is. "She's still our mother," Emma said quietly. "I know, and I'm sorry you had to find out about it this way." There was a long pause. Then Emma said, "Dad, I understand why you did it. After everything she put us through, everything she put you through, I get it. But maybe it's time to stop now." She was right. The revenge was complete, but it had come at a cost. Sarah was broken, possibly permanently, and my children would have to live with the knowledge that their father had been the one to break her. I visited Sarah in the hospital that afternoon. She looked small and fragile in the hospital bed. Nothing like the confident, manipulative woman who'd tried to destroy my life. "I'm sorry," she said when she saw me. "For all of it. I know that doesn't mean anything now, but I needed to say it." "It means something," I replied. "Not enough to change what happened, but something. Are you going to keep destroying me?" I looked at this woman who'd been my wife, my partner, my closest friend for 2 decades before becoming my worst enemy. "No, it's over. But Sarah, you need help, real help. What you did to our family, to yourself. That's not normal behavior." She nodded weakly. "I know. I've been talking to the doctors here. They think I might have some kind of personality disorder. It doesn't excuse what I did, but maybe it explains it." "Maybe." I stood to leave, then turned back. "For what it's worth, I did love you. For 20 years, I loved you more than anything in the world. I would have done anything to make you happy." "I know," she whispered, "and I threw it all away for nothing." I left the hospital and drove home to my children, to the house I'd built with my own hands, to the life I'd fought so hard to preserve. The war was over. I'd won, but the victory felt hollow. Sarah was destroyed, Rick was gone, and my family was safe, but the cost had been higher than I'd anticipated. That night, as I tucked Jake into bed, he asked me a question that cut straight to the heart of everything. "Dad, do you think Mom will ever be okay again?" I thought about it for a long moment. "I don't know, buddy. But that's not our responsibility anymore. Our job is to take care of each other and move forward." "Do you hate her?" "No," I said, surprised to realize it was true. "I'm angry at what she did, and I'll never trust her again, but I don't hate her. Hate is what she felt, and look where it got her." Jake nodded solemnly. "I love you, Dad." "I love you too, son. Both of you. More than anything in the world." As I turned off his light and closed his door, I reflected on everything that had happened. Sarah had tried to destroy me, but in the end, she'd only destroyed herself. I'd gotten my revenge, but it had cost me something too, a piece of my soul that I'd never get back. But my children were safe. My home was secure. My reputation was restored. And maybe, with time, I could learn to live with what I'd done. The truth had set me free, but freedom always comes with a price. In the end, I'd learned something important about revenge. It's not about making your enemies suffer. It's about making sure they can never hurt you again. And Sarah would never hurt anyone again.